Welcome, I'm Rogers Anderson. As we go around the county, we have the great honor today to be talking to the mayor of Brentwood, Jill Burgin. Great to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
You're also a commissioner. Before I get into how you become mayor, because you all run or appointed actually as the mayor, a little bit different than what Dr. Ken Moore and most of the other mayors do. We do want to talk about that. But a lot of people don't know you from a standpoint, how in the world did you get involved in politics? And so let's go back in time. Where'd you go to school? Where were you raised at? Tony, take us through a little bit of short journey of where you are today.
Okay, I can do that. I'm a native Tennessean. I was born and raised in Memphis, as were my parents, and I'm an only child. I went to school up at UT Knoxville. And
what'd you major in?
Journalism. And I always wanted to be a writer and editor, so did that. And then after about 3 years of having a little too much fun and not so much studying, my parents said, I think you should come home. And so I ended up graduating from the University of Memphis. It was Memphis State at the time. With a degree in journalism. I did make straight A's that last year that I was there, by the way.
It's amazing how you can get focused when mom and dad say we're cutting the money off.
This is for real, that's right. Yeah, but it was a great experience at both schools, honestly. And I ended up getting a job in Memphis at Memphis Magazine, which is a city magazine there, and it was a great start. And then when I got married, I moved here to Williamson County in 1991. And worked a little bit in an outplacement firm in Brentwood where folks were getting downsized and they needed letters and resumes to help in the job search, and I did a little bit of that for them there. But then as I started having children, I decided to stay home, and because when you have twins, the cost of daycare gets a little expensive there, so stayed home and raised 3 boys. Those twins are in college now, and I have a son who's a freshman at Brentwood High School. So still very actively involved in the schools locally, as you have to be, you know, but they do such a great job there, can't complain at all. All my boys went through Lipscomb Elementary, Brentwood Middle, and Brentwood High School, and we've had great experiences.
So somewhere along that journey, you got involved in politics.
Was not my intention at all. It's funny. I did end up working here in journalism jobs. I worked as a copy editor and a columnist at Williamson AM, the Williamson County Bureau of the Tennessean. And when you do that kind of thing, your neighbors and friends tend to come to you with questions or, you know, I have this issue, who do I call? What do I do to get it solved? And so after a few years of that, I noticed one of my friends kept talking about running for city commission. She would say she was going to do it and then not do it. And then one year when 2 of the older commissioners, Joe Regan and Joe Sweeney, were going to retire, she said, you should run. And I said, for once I didn't say, oh no, you know, I said, no, maybe. And I just thought about it. And it's different when you think about taking on a sitting commissioner, but when there's open seats, it seems like something that you might be able to do. So I knew nothing about the campaign process or any of that stuff, but I asked a lot of questions, met with a lot of folks, got a lot of advice, and managed to be one of the 4 who was elected at that time in 2011. And that was a great experience, very challenging, but it's the best way to learn about your city and what people think about it and what people want it to be.
So in Brentwood, we kind of touched on it a few minutes ago. The mayor's position is elected between the other men and women that serve as commissioners.
We have a city commission form of government with a city manager. So the city commissioners we are all elected at large. We don't have districts or wards. And we like it that way. We feel like it gives us all ownership of the whole city. We don't get a little territorial or anything like that. But yes, we stagger our elections so that the whole board is not up at one time for re-election. And it ends up being every 2 years we have an election. And after that election, the 7 of us vote for a mayor. And I did serve 2 terms as vice mayor before I was elected mayor almost 2 years ago.
So really, when in your form of government, which is different from the other cities, and each of our cities is a little bit different than the other cities.
We can't all be the same.
Yeah, no. But it's your charter. It's how it's filed,
Right.
and those men and women that set that charter in place way back in when was Brentwood incorporated?
1969, and we will talk about that in a minute because it's going to be our 50th birthday next year.
That's correct. So. That was the charter, that the way it was. So nobody really has to run as mayor. If I happen to know you because you attend so many meetings, and it's a full-time job with commissioner pay, which
Right.
is not very
Part-time
much.
pay,
Part-time
definitely.
pay, but you do meetings in Nashville on a regional basis. You do certainly meetings in your own community, and of course, I was able to get you to come down here and talk a little bit about 2018. So let's just jump into 2018.
Okay.
We're wrapping up the close of a year. I know a lot of important things that have happened and occurred in Brentwood during this year. And then let's talk a little bit about 2019.
Okay, we could do that. It's been a busy year here. Things have sort of steadied out, I think, in Brentwood. We've had a lot of major retail developments over the last couple of years that are settled in now. They've run through one Christmas season now at some of those new stores in the area. And we've had a major road project start. It's actually a TDOT project, but Franklin Road being widened from Concord down to Moore's Lane has started, and it's gone well so far, but it's going to be another at least year and a half probably that'll be going on. So those are sort of the main things we've been doing, monitoring. We've had a new elementary school open up over there that y'all put in for us, which has been great, and the community there has already, stood up and embraced that school, and I'm glad to have their own.
So I'm going to interrupt you as you go along, let you catch your breath a little. Brentwood does something that none of the other cities do, in that you give money back, I'm talking about in schools. You give money back for those schools that are that their citizens or the boys and girls go to, and help each one of those schools.
That's true, and that was something that the commissioners started, I think, in 1984. It's been going on for that long, though, to the point where we've donated almost $5 million to this point. And what they do is they designate an amount per school that serves Brentwood residents. So it doesn't necessarily mean it's in our city limits, but if kids who live in Brentwood are zoned there. And they like to give some cash basically to the PTO groups, like boots on the ground money to use directly that doesn't get absorbed into the budget. I'm sorry. But we like to give it to those groups to use it where they see they need it the most. And so we give $10,000 to each elementary school, $15,000 to each middle school, and $60,000 to each high school.
Which each one of those schools, that's a sizable amount that helps them. That some of the other schools outside of Brentwood, the cities, that's individual choice. And
Right.
you all make a choice to do that, or you've done it. I know I've been around the political circle since 1986, and I know you've done it. And I remember in those early days how important that was. It wasn't the same amount you're giving today,
Sure.
but it was to help with computers when we first got into that. And of course now it's really discretionary money.
It is, and I think the city recognized that even though we don't have our own school system, they wanted to contribute in some way, above and beyond just the typical tax money that goes. So it was definitely, now they're still using it for technology uses, things like that, to sort of fill gaps that they might find themselves in.
So your commission, you have how many? 7 commissioners.
We have 7.
But if my memory serves me correct, there were 6 for a long time.
There were 5, and then the year that Betsy ran, I believe it was 2000. I want to say 2007, and maybe
Betsy Crossland.
Correct. Thank you. They were going to expand to add 2 commissioners because of the population growth.
So, in 2018, in fact, you and I were together yesterday in a meeting, kind of a panel discussion, which all the mayors, all 6 mayors across the county,
That was great, yeah.
meeting with a regional group, statewide group of Chamber of Commerce. And I've been in the Hills Center half a dozen times over the course of the last year, just absolutely it's got to have made a huge difference in Brentwood.
It has. I mean, in the quality of life, I think, for the residents, and of course, definitely with tax revenue, that corner where the Hill Center is located, it's a lot larger, I think, than people realize. There are about 17 acres total with those two tracts there. But for 30 years, the Tennessee Baptist Convention headquarters building was on that corner. And of course, that's off the tax rolls. They were tax exempt. And then the other tract was the Murray, Ohio headquarters, which was vacant for 11 years.
Yes.
And I think people would have been happy to just drive by that empty building for another 11 years, but some developers had another idea, and they wanted to do a mixed-use development there. And of course, it was very scary for a lot of residents. And I mentioned this yesterday, but the people who move to Brentwood always want us to shut the gate behind them and leave it exactly as it is and don't change it at all. That we love it just like this. And so the concept of this mixed-use development was really frightening. And there were some apartments in there in the original plans, and that scared people. They were concerned about infrastructure in schools. So over a couple of years and a lot of anguish, we worked with the developer. They got mad. They took their plan away. They came back with a new plan that was smaller. It didn't have any homes in it or anything. It was just retail and office. There's going to be a hotel there. But we tried to convince folks that rather than just building more office buildings there on that already congested Maryland Way, it would be better traffic-wise to have mixed use, to have businesses where cars come and go at different times, a hotel where the traffic isn't all arriving at 8:30 in the morning and leaving at 5 at night. So. And just in quality of life, we've got restaurants where we can go now to celebrate special occasions. We don't have to go to Nashville or Franklin to do that. There's stores where even, the high school kids can work and not have to leave their own town. I heard people over last Christmas saying they were so glad they didn't have to go to Green Hills to shop for Christmas presents. So it's been a really great addition, I think. And with City Park across the street as well, it's been a really great addition.
You gave a statistic yesterday, and I've heard you give it before, of your city tax base and the percentage of the commercial. I mean, it's just, when you think about it, it's amazing.
It really is. I'm amazed it works this way. But a lot of people think of Brentwood as an upscale, expensive community, and the property values are high, but our property taxes are very low. We don't offer as many city services, granted, that Franklin does, but we do have police and fire and roads and library and things like that. But our city is definitely mostly residential. We're 88% residential. The 5% of our property that's zoned commercial contributes more than 2/3 of our tax revenue. And so our residents don't have to cover the cost as much as they might in other cities, because every time the cash register rings in Brentwood or at a restaurant even, that money helps to pay for that.
So you've got some major corporations in Brentwood. People may not realize that, but that's one that always pops up on my radar that I think is a great corporate partner, is Tractor Supply.
They've been phenomenal, and they've
been there a long time.
They have, and they were in, I think, 2 buildings at one point in Maryland Farms, and they were so happy to get this one consolidated location, which is a beautiful building, and they maintained some trees in there so it fits in a little better aesthetics-wise. But, I know they are big sponsors of the fair and the equestrian center over at Harlansdale and just so many other events in town. They've already stepped up to help sponsor some of our birthday events that we're going to have next year. So people don't always think about that, about companies that move into your area, but they generally want to be part of the community.
Well, I made the comment, and I know you would agree with it, when corporations move to Williamson County, whether it's Brentwood or it's one of our other cities, we really expect them to engage and be part of our community.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's not just you moving in and taking, it's about you moving in and giving.
And I think that corporations realize that now is something that employees want as well. They like to have some kind of sense of community where they work too.
So 18's rolling off the books, and 19's coming about. What's in 2019 that we think that would be of importance in our county for Brentwood?
We are probably the biggest project that we're going to undertake is really just a Brentwood government project, but it's very much needed. We're going to build a new police headquarters, and I mentioned yesterday that we're really a city that likes to do more with less, and we are really lean government. So our police and our dispatch center have been working in our city hall for 30 plus years now in less than ideal conditions, making do with what they've got, spread out across a large building in different sections and everything. So it's going to be really great to have one facility in the middle of town. It's on Heritage Way, which is actually the other side of Knox Valley, near that intersection with Concord where the library is. And it's more geographically centered, which is great for them. And it'll be just a much better working environment for them. But that's going to take a while to build, and we're just getting started in the construction process, engineering and design stage. So that's probably the biggest thing that we'll be doing. But the most fun thing I think we'll be doing is celebrating our 50th birthday as a city.
Tell us about that. Well, I mean,
Brentwood,
now a lot of people don't want to turn 50.
That's true. That's true. And it's pretty young for a city, especially compared to Franklin. And Franklin is so good at doing festivals and stuff like that and parades. And so Brentwood's decided to try their hand at this now. And people really seem to love those community events. And so
they do.
We've got 3 main things planned. We have a parade that's going to be in April in Maryland Farms, and we're going to get the high school bands from Brentwood High and Ravenwood High, and then we're going to try to get all 3 the principals from Brentwood Academy and the other 2 high schools on a float together, because it's about unity and community. So we want all community groups to have floats in that parade, and then we're going to have a big concert festival. It's going to be kind of a day-long thing in Crockett Park in June, with a beer garden and a kids zone and things like that that we're still planning. And then in October, we're going to have a fundraising gala with, we want people to get dressed up, and we're going to have it at Ravenswood Mansion, which is the historic home in Smith Park on Wilson Pike.
Well, I'm glad you brought up Smith Park, because that may be the crown jewel in Brentwood, and it ranks right up there with all of the parks that we've got. I didn't prep you for this, so if you don't know how many acres it is, but if you don't mind sharing that with the people, where it's located and some of the things that occur at Smith Park.
It's right at our city limits next to Franklin on Wilson Pike, just south of Ravenwood High School, and it was the Wilson Farm for a long time, and it's been, the Smith Farms, well, it was the Wilson Farm originally, but then the Smith family had owned it. But it's about 300 acres there, and it's really a hiking park. We're talking about having mountain bike trails, things like that out there. There's a few practice fields, but it's not so much sports related as Crockett Park is. So it's sort of like our Warner Park out here in Brentwood, really. And the hiking is really great. There's some big ridges out there. It's beautiful and really remote, and you can find some really great stone walls and huge old growth trees. It just feels like you're in your own little world when you get out there sometimes, and all times of the year. It's been a great, I think the city bought that originally at the end of 2010, and it was a really great example of planning, and so that's something Brentwood has managed to do over the years, was buy that parkland along the way, make that investment to the point that now we have over 1,100 acres of parkland just in our 44 square miles of city limits, and that's a lot of parkland per resident, really, but I think it's something that, once it's gone, it's gone. So rather than having another neighborhood there, I'd much rather have this park.
Well, you've been blessed, and I've worked with 2 of the finest city managers that a city would want, Kurt and
Mike Walker.
Yeah. Mike Walker. They're just outstanding. They've each won the designation and an award for being City Manager of the Year in their own little world that they have. But they're very, very good of getting things done for the commissioners, and they're phenomenal with the dollars.
Absolutely. And that's been really the basis for Brentwood's success, honestly, is that financial planning and knowing that you can't, it doesn't just happen, you have to be intentional about it. You have to do less with more, really, and you have to think ahead of the future, because things will happen, that either it's going to be a recession or a disaster or something like that, and you have to be prepared.
I made a comment recently that Brentwood, Charles Sargent, who passed away here about a month ago, used to give a talk, and in that talk he felt like he was the only state representative in the United States, not in Tennessee, that had, and nobody ever questioned him on it, but that had two three-star cities. He represented both Brentwood and Franklin, and he had a three-star county in the world of financial responsibilities. And for you that are watching this and maybe not really following what I'm saying, so you go to borrow money,
which you have to do.
You have to do, and you have a credit score. Well, cities and counties have a credit score with the rating agencies, and the highest you can get is a 3-star. Now, there are different rating agencies. You have Moody's, and you have Standard & Poor's, and you have a few of the others, D&B. But the 3-star is synonymous with that you have got money in the bank, and not just sitting there, but they're looking at your investment portfolio. They're looking at how your tax structure is, what you've got on the drawing board, the roads, the infrastructure side of the world. And Brentwood and Franklin have just done a marvelous job with handling the money side of it. And that's a direct credit, certainly to the elected officials, but when all the dust settles, it's the men and women that are your city managers and your office staff. And sometimes they don't always get the credit. The politicians are the ones that have to bring it up. But at the end of the day, it's those workers that you have on a day-by-day basis. And I know recently, I mean, just in Brentwood, just in the last month, you've had some unusual things that would engage your police department. I mean, there's just something you don't hear about.
Yeah.
But you've got one of the finest police chiefs. His daddy was a county commissioner for years and years. And Chief Hughes is great.
Yeah, you can't replace them, that expertise they bring to the job. And honestly, Franklin as well with Eric Stuckey, I mean, we're definitely in good hands with those guys in charge. And I can't imagine in Kirk's position, our city manager, having 7 bosses. I don't know what that would be like, you know. But it's he does a great job. And he was the assistant city manager under Mike Walker for several years before he assumed that position. And so we've enjoyed his, you know, Mike Walker used to say, I'm just driving the bus. Y'all are telling me where to go, you know, to the city commission. And so we're supposed to be the policy-making board, and then they carry it all out for us. But it gets interesting every once in a while, but we definitely rely on them. So
Brentwood's been in existence, or incorporated, this would be the correct term, 50 years next year. A lot of growth.
Definitely. Our population has doubled since the year 2000. So we're just under 44,000 people now.
Area of services that you all render out, there's not a lot that you could still annex. There's probably 1 or 2 spots, but not very much. Not like Franklin.
Exactly. And we're not looking to annex a lot. We like what we've got now, and we're trying to maintain that. And we're looking at build out, you know, over the next few years. But we've got it planned. But yeah, we don't want to add a ton more to that.
So we just got about 5 minutes left to go in our interview, but. Police stations, fire stations.
Oh yeah, I can't forget that. We are adding a fire station, and that east side of town, you know, is just...
The east side is where? You got to kind of peg it down a little bit more than
over
that.
Toward the Nolensville side of town. And the chief is very excited to we've settled on a location for that. You know, there's some science involved, and you don't want to put your fire station right up on the city limits and cut your service radius in half. So we finally found a location that'll work best for them, and their response times have always been good. They can be even better now.
So Franklin is a fire class 1. What's Brentwood overall? Is it a 2? Did I trip you up on that?
You may have. We have the ISO rating, and I thought it was.
Is it a 1?
I think we are 1 now, but
okay.
I should have crammed on that before I came.
Well, just something I thought of when you say, because to get that fire, if you're a 1 or 2, 1 is the best you can get.
Right.
And I mean, that's tremendous service, because in today, the world we live in, on our side, of course, all of ours are volunteers out into the county. We try very hard to stay within that 5-mile radius to provide that protection. But the guys were telling me just recently that less than 15% of the calls are about fires.
Yeah. Absolutely. They're always, they're often responding to traffic accidents or medical calls usually. And our police and fire are the most common interactions that citizens have with their government around here, whether it's a good or a bad situation. And they do a great job of representing us and doing their best in any situation. But it's trying times, especially for the police department. And they have to manage a lot to, maintain that excellent quality, but still safe for their officers as well. And so it's been a really challenging year, but they're great at their job.
So look into that crystal ball and tell me what Brentwood's going to look like in 50 years.
Ooh.
So we pack on another 50. It's 100 years from now. You may still be around, but you'll be getting a little age on you at that time.
Right.
What does it look like?
I want to say, Rogers, that it'll look pretty similar in terms of, it'll be green, it'll be an attractive place to live. People will be pleased when they look around, and I want it to be a safe city overall, but who knows? They said we'd be in flying cars by now, so I'm afraid to stick my neck out there on that one. But I think that the original planners, they wanted it to feel like an extension of that Forest Hills and Oak Hill part of Nashville when you came in down Franklin Road there, and hopefully that we can maintain that, at least that standard,
Well, I think there's a lot of places in Brentwood that are like so many other places that this next generation of young people are moving into our community. They're taking what I call the ranch homes, which I wish I had a ranch home. But they're taking the ranch homes, particularly when the Scales community went on for a long time, and they're completely doing a renovation job on those things, and they're just gorgeous.
They are. And it's funny, those smaller homes are the ones that really maintain their value even through the recession. Some of those huge mega mansions lost a lot of value when the market dropped like that, but those smaller homes really held their value, and now you don't even have to list it to sell them in Brentwood. That word of mouth market is huge there.
I heard you give the number.
Oh, gosh.
The new home construction cost.
Well, our average sale price last month was in the 860s.
That's amazing.
Which that's the average. It just blows my mind. So.
Got 1 minute. What have I overlooked that you want to touch on?
Oh my goodness! I really do want folks to come out and help us celebrate that birthday next year, because we don't stick our heads out of the sand very often, but when we do, we really want folks to celebrate with us. And we're generally a quiet, no news is good news community, but next year we want everybody to come to Brentwood for sure.
Well, I'll try to put that on my calendar. I hope you all get some things out. Maybe you can get a float with all the mayors.
That's a great idea. We got to get you in that parade for sure.
Jill Burgin, mayor, and over in Brentwood, solid citizen, person you can depend on, and a friend of mine, and done a great job. Thank you for taking time out.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you for watching today's show. Talk a little bit about Brentwood. We don't get that opportunity, one of our elite cities, but just good, solid people. Thank you. It's Rogers Anderson. I'll see you around the next time.